Hello everybody, and welcome back to Certified Collectibles. Today we're going to be talking about one of the most hotly debated topics in the video game collecting community, and that is whether or not high-grade CIBs, complete box copies, have any value and have any place in a long-term investment portfolio of graded video games. Now, if you've been watching the video game market and the auction market for the past 2 or 3 years, you've seen that most of the games that come to market are sealed copies of games, and they're drawing huge premiums in the auction market. But a lot of the complete box games in high grade, the CIBs in high grade, are falling through the cracks. A lot of people are not bidding on these complete box games, and that may or may not come back to haunt them later because, in our opinion, once all the sealed video games, all the high grade sealed video games are in people's collection, they will start coming back for these complete box, these high grade CIBs. So today we're going to take a look at the CIBs and the sealed games and see which one you should be adding to your long-term investment portfolio and if the CIBs have any value in there or belong in there or not. We did bring along a few games, a few high-grade CIBs here to help us aid us in our discussion today. We have a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 in 9.6, a Final Fight 3 in 9.6, and we have a kind of a control game here, the Lord of the Rings, and a 9.6 A+ is a sealed game. So I think it's been important to discuss the differences between the CIBs and the sealed games to begin with and who collects which. Now, before WATA games entered the market, before video game grading entered the market, a lot of collectors collecting the sealed games, they were doing it strictly for investment purposes. They were keeping them nice, mint fresh. They did not intend to play those games. Those were particularly just collectibles, high-grade collectibles from decades before. You know, if you're collecting games from the 80s, 90s, 30, 40-year-old video games, these are games you're just holding as collectibles in their sealed form. You're not going to play them. CIBs, complete box games. Now, these games were typically picked up and collected by people who enjoyed playing the games. These boxes were always opened. That's why they're called complete box, because you had the cartridge, the manual, and the outer packaging, the box that came with it. A lot of these games, like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle here in front, also has most of the seal. The seal is actually just cut across the top portion here on the back to open the box. So all the stickers you see here on the front of this game are actually on the seal itself. So this game is almost sealed, but since it is open and the contents have been taken out, it is a complete box. But a 9.6 in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 here, this is the highest grade that exists. There, I think, is a sealed copy of this that we've seen on market, but you have not seen a 9.8 on market, sealed or CIB. That's because they do not exist. A 9.6 is the highest grade. So is a 9.6 CIB worse than a 9.6 sealed copy? That's one of the things we're going to be discussing today. But let's get back to what we were talking about. People that collected the open box, the CIBs, they wanted to play those games. You know, they wanted to keep them minty fresh. A lot of these boxes, like I said, 9.6, super high grade for a video game, 30, 40 years old. But they wanted to actually play the games themselves also. So they kept the games nice, kept the cartridge and manuals nice, and they kept them in their collection. They may or may not want to sell them in the future for a profit, not like the sealed collectors. But they did want to play the games. Maybe they want to get a complete run of them, play the games they had when they were a kid, but maybe they did want to, since they kept them nice, maybe they did want to sell them in the future, you know, for the same price they paid or a profit. But all the guys that are collecting the sealed games were just collecting these with an investor mindset. They did want to sell these in the future for a profit. They were not playing the games. They were collecting the item as a collectible itself, as a unit. So let's take a look at what goes into grading a sealed copy and the CIBs. The sealed copy here, you'll see this is a 9.6 A+. So when WATA goes to grade this, they are grading the box and the seal. The seal has an A+. The highest you can get is an A++. And the game itself, the box itself, has a 9.6 grade. Mostly the highest you'll ever see is a 9.8. I don't think we've ever seen any 10s. 10s may exist, but we have not seen any. So a 9.8, let's say, is the highest you'll get. This is a 9.6. So when WATA goes to grade this, they're looking at the packaging and the seal. That is all they have to go by to grade this particular game. So they're not grading any of the contents. That's all they see. So there's 2 units to grade when they're grading a sealed game, the seal and the box. When they go to grade a complete box game, there's going to be more units, more components to take a look at. They're looking at the box itself, the outer packaging, that gets a grade. the cartridge inside gets a grade, and the manual itself gets a grade. This particular game here, the box got a 9.6, the cart got a 9.6, and the manual got a 9.8. So the manual's in pristine, perfect condition. So the overall grade for this is a 9.6. So like I mentioned previously, the only other copy that matches this is a sealed copy in 9.6. So is that better because it's sealed? It's still a 9.6. This here is a 9.6 also. So which one should you hold in your collection? Also, Final Fight 3, super rare game to get in CIB or sealed. I think there's only been 3 of these that come to auction in the past 3 years. The highest one that's come to auction is the 9.0 A+. That came to auction in July of last year. That sold for $2,300. That was a sealed copy. This here is a 9.6, much higher grade, but it is a CIB. So should that be worth $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000? If a 9.0 sold last year for $2,300, what's a 9.6 worth? This one here, the box itself is a 9.8, pristine box. The cart is a 9.0 and the manual is a 9.6. So the overall grade for this is a 9.6. So is a 9.6 CIB less valuable than the 9.0 that sold last year? Once again, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. This game here, 9.6. You know, only 8 of these have come to auction in the past, whether CIB or sealed. Only 8 have come to auction in the past 2 years through Heritage Auctions. Only 2 of those have been sealed. All the others have been CIB. So there's only been 2 sealed copies. The highest was a 9.2 that sold last July as well, July of 2020. That sold for $9,000. That's the highest grade that's ever come to market. Like I said, the 9.6 is the highest grade that exists. So if a 9.0 sold for $9,000, is a 9.6 CIB worth 10, 12, 13, 14, or is it worth 1 or 2, or is it worth $500? That is one of the questions that a lot of investors and collectors are trying to figure out right now, because if they can figure it out correctly, you're talking about a substantial gain if you're picking up some of these high-grade CIBs and holding them in your collection, you know, for long-term investment, because a lot of the sealed games and high-grade seal games, they're going for a big premium right now. It's hard to get a good deal on those. A lot of people have come to this market. A lot of people know to seek out those sealed high-grade games. So a lot of these high-grade CIBs falling through the cracks, you can pick them up for hundreds of dollars. Well, you could have. I think people are starting to catch on right now. So these are starting to creep up in price, but you have to take a few things into consideration when you're putting together a long-term investment portfolio, and that's what we're focusing on right now. If you're just collecting these because they remind you of games you played as a child and you wanted to maybe get a complete run of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games, you remember going to the arcade and playing them, that's a completely different thing. Pick up a CIB, pick up a used copy, pick up an ungraded copy. You know, that's a whole different collecting mindset. Today we're just focusing on investment, the investment mindset, and selling these games, collecting them, holding them, and selling them for a profit in the future. So, should you be picking up the CIBs in high grade? The sealed games, they are a finite group. There's not going to be sealed games that come to market continuously for the next 30, 40, 50 years. And the way a lot of these auction companies are pushing this category, they're pushing it just like the graded comics. Graded comics, there are tons of graded comics in people's collections that they've held on to since they were children, you know, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. They're coming to market. Comic books are continually being printed. So all the comics from the 80s, 90s, 2000s are now getting graded, and there's some of them are drawing huge premiums as well. So there's a constant supply of comic books, and there's also millions of those printed. Video games, especially vintage video games, a lot of people did not keep them sealed because they were meant to be played. That is one of the things that creates the rarity with the sealed games. That's why most people go after the sealed games, because in itself, it is a unique item because it's sealed from 30, 40, 50 years ago. Nobody played it. They're much, much more scarce than complete box items. Complete box items, yeah, there's going to be hundreds of thousands of these out there because people bought these games to play. How many of them are nice? Probably just as many as are nice in the sealed condition, because people took these home, played them, threw away the boxes, threw away the manuals, tossed the carts around. People did not keep these things nice. So in nice condition, they're probably just as scarce as the sealed copies, you know, but a lot of people just are going after the sealed games right now because that's kind of where the market is pushing. But once a lot of the sealed games start getting absorbed into people's collections and they're not coming to market as much, you've kind of started to see this somewhat. and some of the weekly auctions that some of the auction houses run for video games, you see a lot more CIBs coming to market than you do sealed, even in low-grade sealed stuff. So a lot of the CIBs are starting to come to market. Mid-grade, low-grade stuff. You don't see high-grade stuff. People are starting to hang on to the high-grade CIB stuff just like they are the high-grade sealed stuff for that reason. Because sealed games, these are finite. There's not unlimited supply of these. These will run out in the future. The vintage games, they're always making games. Games are moving to digital, so who knows how long physical games will exist. But they are still making games. Those games, 20, 30 years may be graded and worth holding on to as well. But right now we're kind of focusing on the vintage games from the 80s, 90s, 2000s. These are the games that people are really rushing after in sealed condition because that's when people weren't really collecting the games for long-term investment. Not, as a broadly in the market and broadly in society. Now people are definitely on the wave and people are hanging on to new games that come out. People are buying case packs of those. So it's going to be a different story 20, 30 years from now. People are definitely hanging on to sealed case packs of games to sell later. So a lot of these vintage games, though, people were not doing that. They were taking them out and playing with them. So which do you add to your collection? Which to hold on to for long-term investment? Sealed games, of course, these are the ones that everybody's after. These are the ones in high grade that you do want to add to your collection. Pick up the sealed games that you can afford to add, the ones you think have the most potential going forward. Add those to your collection, hang on to them, and see where they go. The CIBs, kind of the same thing. If you could pick up high-grade CIBs for a fraction of the cost of the sealed counterparts, and some of these, like I said, this is the 9.6 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This is the highest grade that exists, sealed or otherwise, sealed or CIB. So this is the highest grade. I mean, why wouldn't you pick up a CIB in 9.6? Same thing with the Final Fight 3 here. The highest grade that exists, the 9.6, the highest grade that we've ever seen. None have ever come to market at 9.8, so we're assuming 9.6 is the highest. A 9.0 is the highest sealed that ever came to market, so why wouldn't you pick up a 9.6? These games do have great potential going forward because people are going to start to realize also that grading 3 components of a game in high grade is much more difficult than grading 2 components, the box and the seal. Here you're grading the box, the cart, and the manual. So take that into consideration when you're putting together your long-term investment portfolio because these things will matter going forward. So we'd love to hear you guys' comments on this particular topic. That's why we wanted to do a video on this today. We want to get your feedback on this. So please leave us some comments in the comment section below. Give us a thumbs up if you like this video. And as always, please remember to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Thank you for joining us here at Certified Collectibles, and we'll see you guys again next time.